Welcome to another episode of the Daily Combat Podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Dave Stockbridge, and this is Hollywood Matt Connolly. The double biceps are out. It's official. 2022 has begun, and this is our very first episode of the year. And joining us today is Daniel Whyte. Thanks so much for joining us, Daniel.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure, mate. And so, Daniel, we've known each other. We've just worked out. We've done the maths. It's 34 years. It's a very long time. It's a long time, Daniel. Well, you're a big reason as to why I'm here today, Daniel, in more ways than one. And that is because I think you introduced me to the world of weight training and martial arts. And the way that you introduced me to the world of weight training was I distinctly remember driving down the road and seeing you, having not seen you for maybe 6 to 8 months. And we just were out of high school for maybe a year or so, and you'd been working. You're a working man all of a sudden, and we dropped out of contact for a little while there as we'd entered our working lives. And I saw you on the side of the road, but I didn't realise it was you, and you were actually moving away from me at the time. And I thought, it looks vaguely familiar, but look at those lats. look. And it was like it was a bigger version of Daniel Whyte. And I thought, fuck it, I've got to do weights now. I can't let Daniel get away with it. This is insane. So it was out of sheer competition with you that I decided to even pick up a weight in the first place, I think. I think that just that moment of, honestly, that moment of seeing you in all of your glory, walking along the side of the road, and I thought, wow, Daniel's done it. He looks amazing. And and then there was that period of time where the UFC had just started. And we've spoken about this a couple of times on the podcast before, and you were the person that introduced me to the UFC, and that was back when watching the UFC meant going to the local deli and getting a video, and hiring that for 3 days, and then bringing it home and inviting all your mates around the TV to watch this spectacle. And that was my first introduction to mixed martial arts all those years ago.
That's awesome. And usually that introduction with the videos back then, the VHS, started with, oh, look at this guy, his name's Tank Abbott, check this out.
Yeah, Tank Abbott, yeah.
It was Tank Abbott, or it was...
Hoist Gracie and all those guys.
Dan Severn, all of the
Freddie Mercury lookalike.
Yeah, that's right. Jacked Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, that's right. So Tank Abbott's quote after he lost to Dan Severn was, "I felt like I was being raped by Freddie Mercury."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Unfortunately, we couldn't just have that across the screen, wouldn't that be absolutely wonderful? Maybe we can superimpose that later. Yeah, great. So Daniel, you're much of the reason why this podcast exists in the first place. So you may never have known that, Daniel.
I didn't know that.
Just wanted to pass that on to you. But more than that, so you've had a wonderful journey through martial arts over the years, and you've become quite the polymath, having adopted a range of styles and developed styles, not necessarily in the traditional way or being graded in the traditional way, but certainly being an enthusiast of many different styles and incorporating them into whatever your regime might be at the time, to the point where you're even instructing in martial arts, even though not formally graded in any way, which kind of speaks to your abilities as a generalist in martial arts, which kind of fits well with the mixed martial arts world that we now find ourselves in, of course. But 10 or so years ago, maybe not so much. It might have been thought of as a bit of a negative that you're not walking around with a 10th Dan black belt or something like that. That might have been a disadvantage to you. But so tell us a little bit about your early journey in martial arts, and perhaps what's your first memories of exposure to martial arts might have been.
Martial arts. All right. Well, just before I get onto the martial arts, just on what you said before with the weight training. Mm-hmm. Funnily enough, that time where you saw me and you said you saw my lats, that was probably 2 years of me and a few other people at our high school being very jealous of your arms. So we were like secretly plotting away over on the side, doing all these things. And I was training in the garage, like for years, late at night, doing chin-ups like every night of the week.
Oh, so the envy circular. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, it is. I figured out pretty early I'm never going to have arms like Dave. You know what? I can have lats.
And that's what I was impressed. You always want the things that you can't have, don't you? All the girls with curly hair, they want the straight hair.
Yeah. But in terms of martial arts, the first things I remember is probably it'd have to be Bruce Lee. I mean, it'd have to be watching the old Bruce Lee movies on Betamax.
Wow.
Which was, that came out, in 1983? So I think the first Bruce Lee movie I saw was about 83, 84.
So for a lot of kids who are watching, they just wouldn't know what Betamax is. So that's the precursor to VHS.
Yes.
So this is on old school video format.
School video.
And how did you stumble across Bruce Lee, or was it something that you saw out, or can you remember what was appealing about it? Or
I don't know. I just remember that video cover with that the artwork, the big boss it was,
right?
And it was that artwork of, and it was like, what is this? Who's this guy? He's doing like a flying kick into the sort of into the camera type thing.
Yeah.
And it just looked fascinating. And being a little kid, I mean, I don't know, that's kind of a young age to get into that, but I guess a lot of people did as well.
Yeah.
Especially with Bruce Lee back in the day.
And you found your inspiration quite young then. And and it was some years later you got to follow in the footsteps of Bruce Lee, so to speak, in that you found yourself in the film industry in Southeast Asia, and even had the opportunity to visit some of those sacred sites of Bruce Lee, having visited his home and checked out a few of the other places that, like the Big Boss.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
where some of the scenes were filmed in the Big Boss.
Yeah, I was such a fanatic fan that I literally followed in his footsteps, and went to Hong Kong, and I went to his house that he lived in many times. Sort of tracked around and found a lot of the locations where he filmed some of his movies, particularly Enter the Dragon in Hong Kong, the Big Boss in Thailand, and a few other locations. One in Macau as well. There's a nice, beautiful park that's still there, which is a scene in Fist of Fury. So yeah, I went back and tracked all these places. Took a lot of footage. I've lost a lot of that footage, which is a bit frustrating. I've been looking for it lately. I'm hoping to do something with it. But yeah, no, it was definitely a great. It's led on to so many adventures. It's
absolutely. So Bruce Lee was pretty much the catalyst for it, which I think a lot of people can say, whether it's martial arts or acting. It's Bruce Lee has seemed to have been a beacon for so many people that might not have otherwise thought of themselves as an actor or wanting to get into acting, but Bruce Lee's very much the gateway drug to that world. Yeah. And you obviously felt yourself pulled in that direction very early on.
Yeah, and I think Bruce Lee's always appealed to the downtrodden, the bullied, the underdogs. And as kids, you two guys are probably similar, I'm guessing. We got bullied a lot in high school, but certainly even in primary school. Yeah. And, you see a Bruce Lee movie and you think, oh, my God, this guy, I want to be like him. I can...
Quite empowering.
Very empowering. I want to be able to defend myself. I want to do this, do that. Of course, it's all just fantasy stuff. But it did lead on to me taking up karate in the mid-'80s up in Queensland there. So did karate for a while as a youngster. And then, met you in 88 in high school. And there was a little group of us. We all sort of had an interest in training martial arts, and things went from there. It wasn't until a real serious study of martial arts. I certainly had the interest in reading and magazines and books and everything all through high school, but it wasn't a real serious study until about the age of 17 in year 11 or 12 when I started doing Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's martial arts. So I started training with Nino Pillar in Adelaide, and Sifu Nino Pillar, and things went from there.
And did you feel, when you went to school, what did you feel you were going to be when you grew up, or where did you think you might end up whilst you're in year 10, year 11, year 12? Did you have any feeling as to, I'm going to be this, or I'm going to move into that area? Or can you remember what areas perhaps you could feel yourself being pushed into by those around you?
Good question. I don't know. It's hard to say. I always... God, we grew up in a very interesting environment where there wasn't a lot of encouragement in different directions. So I think, in my mind, I wanted to be a refrigeration mechanic or...
Just like a trade or something like that.
Yeah, or an architect, something like that. I was thinking at that time.
Yeah.
But as you know, high school was very. It was very much you're just sort of going day by day, aren't you? You're sort of almost trying to survive because you've always got someone wanting to pick on you. You've always got someone wanting to beat you up at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It was a bit like that, and
so it can be for a lot of kids. Yeah.
Right here, that was me as well. Yeah, horrible, man. Yeah, I still use that as motivation when I'm training. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's weird now because I know that you look back at it and it's like, well, these are like 15, 16-year-old kids. It's like, you sort of learn to deal with it and all the rest of it. And it's like, but those painful memories still flash into my mind when I'm like, I need some fuel, some motivation here.
2 more reps.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, I know that person's not even the same person now. But for me, it's like, you're right here forever.
Definitely a big issue, isn't it, in the world, bullying and stuff like that. But having said that, towards the end of school, I was really starting to fantasize about, could I be in movies. What are these martial art movies? Bloodsport.
Yeah.
Came out.
My favorite
How good's
film,
that?
favorite movie.
Bloodsport. Is it?
It is, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I've seen it. Probably maybe 300 or 400 times. Like literally. Yeah, amazing, amazing movie.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
And that was one where I thought, and I found a little story I wrote recently back in the day about going to Hong Kong and finding a secret tournament.
Oh yeah,
all that stuff. And it's funny, a lot of the things I wrote in that little short story, I wrote, actually did come true.
So this is a little story that you wrote when you were younger, and a bit of a fantasy about what. So you were the central character in the back of your mind, were you? And
Daniel Dukes, was it?
he beats up bullies during the day and enters rogue karate tournaments at night. Yes, something along those lines.
Fastest kick world history.
Oh yeah, there's been a few videos lately coming out on the internet, sort of. What would you say? Revealing the
Frank Duke story,
the stories, the tall tales.
Yes,
you might say.
Yeah, I think there's a full documentary on it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it did lead to a good film, so we can say that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think. Well, the thing is that Frank Duke sort of, I think, embellished a lot about everything that possibly happened in his world. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter when you're watching a movie, whether it's fictional or true. But it's funny, at the very end of the film, they do flash up a couple of little stats, and one of them, as I said, fastest kick ever. And who's measuring fastest kick?
It was timed at like 452 miles per hour per second or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like 500 fights in a row without being defeated or something.
Amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. And he wears sunglasses in every interview now because the lights affect his, so many punches to the head and that sort of thing from those days that
really?
He can't handle the
direct sunlight.
the direct light from these sorts
That's
of light.
same when I smoke a lot of weed.
Yeah,
same.
I think it's so you can't see how he's trying to think of a lie.
So you can't see that.
Anyway, it did lead to a good film, we'll say that.
Yeah, for sure.
That probably inspired a lot of young guys, to do gym work and martial arts and all that stuff. And Bloodsport was fantastic. And then, of course, all the other films that came out. But
the mic, sorry, man. If you keep it a little closer, because it's sort of, you're dropping every now and then, that's all.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you're at school. You're fantasizing about this world that might be out there in Southeast Asia, in some den in a cellar. There's a underground fight going on that you're not a part of that
Kumite.
you dearly love to be.
The word is kumite.
And which it's easy for people to be discouraging of that and say, like, you're living in a bit of a fantasy world now, Daniel. What are you doing? And you did go off and get yourself quite a normal 9-to-5 job, and then but you never stopped with this idea of acting and continued through and kind of supported yourself through that period. So you started picking up some training and got some skills together. And when did you show potential to yourself that you thought, hang on, I might be an actor, or this might be something for me. I'm actually good at this. It's just not a fantasy now.
I'm not sure there was ever a point where I thought I'm actually really good at this, but there was a very strong desire to do it. There was this very strong will to actually, I just want to do this. If someone else can do it, why can't I? There was that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it took years to get confidence doing classes. And in my early 20s started doing part-time acting classes, and then went on to study at university for 4 years, got a Bachelor of Arts degree in Performing Arts, studying acting. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I was much more confident in it. But it took many years for me to get there. I was very shy, very nervous, very not confident in any way. My first TV commercial actually was a Pizza Haven commercial here actually.
Yep.
And all I had to do, literally, I was in my early 20s, all I had to do was walk past the screen, holding a pizza, smiling. That's all I had to do. Mm-hmm. Do you think I could do that? No. My face just used to freeze up.
Yeah.
That was how it used to the nerves used to manifest. Just get a frozen face. So I walked past it, a couple of times holding the pizza, and I wasn't smiling at all. And the director came over and said, I think you better just make that smile a little bit bigger. And I was like, oh, okay. And then when I went back, I realised my face had frozen even more. Wow. The pressure was on, the performance pressure. And then so then I walked across a few more times. I could not smile. And then I could see that the producers were getting a bit frustrated, and the director comes, "You really got to smile." So I walked past, I just forced this smile, and it sort of worked. And that was the first sort of breakthrough thing. And then, but that happened many times after that.
Yeah.
Especially in the early days. My God.
Yeah, it's a different thing, isn't it? When they hit that record button and everyone's watching you.
Yeah.
And it's like you might have 30 people all just looking straight at you to see the performance. And it could be something that simple where it's like, just walk past and smile. And you're like, oh my God, again, everyone's watching me. This is... And you got to learn that skill, don't you, of just completely ignoring everything that's happening and just, whatever you've got to do. Whether, okay, I'm walking, I'm just doing that. That's what I'm doing. I don't care about... You could have 1 million people watching me, but I'm ignoring it. And because, you'll have scenes where somebody's got a camera and they're literally... coming right up into you, or and you're pretending that they're not there at all, which is something that is completely unnatural. It just takes time on set, and to be able to develop that skill. I think people don't see that from the outside. If they're watching a film, they just see the end result. And if you watch a film now and you sort of see that any moments where they're doing like a real close. That's a dude like walking up to the guy and getting in his face with a camera, and you'll see it. They've always say like, don't look down the barrel of the camera. You got to sort of look past it or whatever. So it is funny, and you would have picked this up with movies as well, where they do have something, and it's like you're seeing the guy deliberately not trying to look into the camera. He's like, you're making it hard, man. You keep putting it there. I'm trying to look over there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so for me, it was always a battle between, there's one part of me going, oh, no, if anyone can do this, you can do this. Why, you can do it. But there was a massive part of me going, oh, no, you can't do this. No, you can't just do that.
Yeah. What are you doing
you
here?
Are? Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
You can't do that. Look at you. You can't even smile.
Yeah.
It's a commercial.
Yeah, so that those inner demons kind of come to the surface when
doubts.
Yeah, and so you kind of felt you continue to kind of follow this passion, and you saved up some money from your work. You moved into study. You were picking up some acting work here and there, getting some experience together, and then by chance you had your first opportunity to travel overseas with uni, and that led to a freakish kind of circumstance that kind of led you down another path there.
That's right, yeah. So I got a chance to go to Shanghai, China for some acting training at the Shanghai Theatre Academy. Mm-hmm. So that was a group of Australians were invited over. I put my hand up straight away. I said, I'd love to go to that because I always wanted to go to Asia. Yeah. And
had you been out of Australia before that?
No, not since childhood.
Yeah.
So that was a great opportunity. I went to Shanghai with the group. We met some wonderful people at the Shanghai Theatre Academy. Actually, a few of them I've lost touch with. I'd love to get back in touch with, but I'm not sure how.
They'll all be big fans of the podcast,
I'm
mate.
sure
they're watching now. Yeah, hello, everybody.
I'm sure. Got a big viewership in China. I'm sure. It was just a fantastic time, and I got there, and man, Shanghai was incredible. Shanghai was like coming from Adelaide to go to Shanghai, it was just such a contrast to the energy. My God, the vibe in the air, the people, everyone's interested in, because you're from somewhere far away, so everyone's interested in you and you're interested in them, and you start learning things from each other. But that was fantastic. And yeah, through that, I actually, I was crossing the road one day. I was only there for a week or two, about 2 weeks maybe. And I was crossing the road, and it was, the area we were in was there wasn't many Westerners around at all. And I saw this elderly gentleman walking towards me, this Western gentleman walking towards me. And I thought, God, where do I know him from? He looks familiar. He was quite tall, quite distinguished looking, white hair, and he might have even had a cigar in his hand. And I thought, geez, I know him. He's from the Bruce Lee movie Way of the Dragon. He was the boss, the mafia boss, John Ben. And I thought, and I went straight up to him and I said, you John Ben? He goes, yeah, absolutely. And I said, oh my God, this is weird. It just felt like a really bizarre 1 in a billion maybe. To be honest, it was a 1 in a billion just to bump into him like that.
Yeah.
And he said that he'd just moved to Shanghai a few weeks earlier from Hong Kong. He'd been in Hong Kong for 25 years or something. So he said, oh, look, I'm running a restaurant or something here. He goes, come over and I'll tell you some stories about Bruce Lee.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean, there's no way you could have paid for that opportunity. Yeah. So it's just one of those freakish life incidences.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I went.
And then what happened there?
Well, I gave him a call, went over to this restaurant. It was really close to the theatre academy where I was staying, coincidentally. And he told me a lot of stories about Bruce Lee, and I got some photos with him, and he was just a really nice gentleman. and he'd had quite a very interesting life himself. He was a real sort of maverick. He traveled all over the world, lived in Asia for 30, 40 years. I mean, anyone who's lived, especially you think he'd lived in Asia in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, anyone who's lived in that sort of
pretty dynamic period.
Yeah, and they've had very, very interesting experiences. So that was quite fascinating for me. But and then he actually put me onto someone in Hong Kong who he was friends with, a producer named Bale, who I actually had was familiar with him because of all his writings. As a teenager, I'd collected this magazine called Impact Magazine. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Impact.
It's like one of the only sort of martial arts magazines that was out at that time.
That's right, yeah. Martial arts movies and action films. So I'd collected all those and I was familiar with the name. And so he sort of connected me up with Bale Logan in Hong Kong, and I got invited to come over by Bay, and he got me on the set of The Twins Effect, which was wasn't really a Jackie Chan movie. Jackie Chan was doing a cameo appearance, but it was a Hong Kong action movie, vampire action movie. And a week later or so, I flew to Hong Kong. First time in Hong Kong. That was incredible. That was just amazing.
So you were still meant to be in Shanghai.
Yeah, that period was coming to a close. So I left a little bit early to get to take this opportunity in Hong Kong.
Yeah, jumped on the plane, went straight over there. Didn't know anybody in Hong Kong. You had a number, you had a contact,
yes,
and chased it down.
Yeah,
and then that led to your first movie role for first time on a movie set,
yes,
or a major movie set.
Yeah.
And what did you take away from that early experience?
Wow, that was incredible. So I got invited straight to the set. I got to Hong Kong. I think within 2 days I was on the set with Jackie Chan right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my God, this is intense.
So 2 weeks earlier, you were in Adelaide, you're at uni, and now you're on set with Jackie Chan. Just like that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And this was 2002.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just as Jackie Chan himself, he was a lot bigger than I thought. Because, you think, little guy, no, he's quite solid. He's quite big. He's not short. He's be a good 5'10", I reckon. He's
really wow.
He was quite a. He's not a tiny guy or anything like that. But it was a real buzz being on that set. It was night shoots, so it's night time. Everyone's in wardrobe. You've got vampires walking around. Jackie Chan's over there. You've got Donnie Yen was the fight action director of the film, who now has obviously become very famous with the Ip Man films and everything else. But back then he was sort of in a bit of a career time where he was doing more fight choreography and action directing, and what a buzz!
And what did that lead on to thereafter? Now you've met these people on set, and you're starting to make some contacts there. Did it lead to anything further?
Yeah, well, firstly, it led on to meeting a bunch of amazing, fantastic people. So I met people like Mark Strange from England. He was working on the film. He's doing very well now by the looks of it. A great friend named Digger Mesh, who was on set playing a vampire, so we became long-time friends. I met Mike Leader through that film, I believe. Yes, it was that film. Mm-hmm. And I met many other great people. But yes, it did lead on to other opportunities. So after that, every couple of years, I would go back to Hong Kong and work on an action film or be involved in some sort of filming.
There seemed to be a period there of 10 or 15 years where almost half your time was spent in that part of the world.
Yeah, I was back and forth a lot. I don't even know how many times I've been there, maybe 30 times, something like that. Yeah.
And what were some of the highlights of that period whilst you were over there?
Oh, highlights. Well, obviously that first one, The Twins Effect. Then a couple of years later, working on Ultraviolet with Mila Jovovich was excellent, playing another vampire, strangely. But just to be on set and we did a lot of sword fighting practice for that one. We did a lot of Japanese style sword fighting practice for that. We did a couple of months actually, and as a matter of fact, for that one, a great memory is having, I went over with Nino Pillar, my Sifu from Adelaide, and a group of other guys, Richard, Ian, and a couple of others, and we went over, as a bit of a team with the goal of working on that film, and we all did. But the training was great. It was the training for the 2 months before the film that is just such a great memory. And it was during that training, actually, that I met my Kung Fu Sifu in that park that we were doing that, my other Kung Fu Sifu, that we were doing the training in that park. I met him in that park. Okay. So it led on to many things. It led on to meeting my Kung Fu teacher from Hong Kong. It led on to other films like, got to work with Benny Chan, who sadly passed away, I think, last year, on Connected, which was a fantastic film. Multiple other films. I mean, even just little things like, being a stand-in for Christian Bale, as
Yes.
we were talking about before, for Batman.
Crazy.
I mean,
Yeah, he's just in the background. Over
Yeah,
there.
I just saw the statue over there. But yeah, just being on set for Batman. I mean, they did a week in Hong Kong, I think, and there was about a 3-day shoot where they did some outdoors stuff, where it was a scene with Morgan Freeman and Christian Bale. But I got a call just a few days earlier saying, "Oh, how tall are you? You know, how much do you weigh?" And gave the information. Next thing I knew, I was in a van being driven to Hong Kong Central and I had no idea. And then I got out. It was Batman, and I'm like, I'm on set. Meet Christopher Nolan. Meet Morgan Freeman, Christian Bale. It was just incredible.
That's awesome.
It was a period of time where just anything was possible. You
Yeah.
know, anything could happen, any day, any minute. A phone call could lead on to anything.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was it like on the set of The Dark Knight?
Set, pretty intense. So there was thousands of people, public, watching from below, because we were up on these sort of these escalators and walkways. Thousands of people watching. There's paparazzi everywhere. News reporters downstairs. Everyone's trying to get a photo. So we had Christian Bale and Morgan Freeman. Christian Bale was very polite, very slick, true. Yeah, true movie star. He came up. He actually introduced himself. Really professional. Yeah, awesome. It was fantastic. Yeah, really cool. Really,
my favourite
cool.
actor, actually.
Very, very cool.
You're 1 degree of separation now.
Oh, yeah, that's it. We got Schwarzenegger from Big E. And,
But what was funny about that whole situation was that they had... so it wasn't when he was dressed as Batman. He was in the Bruce Wayne suit.
Yeah.
So they had me dressed in the suit. I was just a stand-in. So a stand-in, for anyone who doesn't know, just basically stands there while they set up the lighting and the cameras, because the actual actors,
Got things to do.
they got things to do.
Yeah.
They don't want to be standing around doing that type of stuff. But, so there was me, and Morgan Freeman also had a stand-in as well. So this African guy that they had hired in Hong Kong, and he was dressed in the same way as Morgan Freeman. Now, what I sort of realised a few days later, and I don't know if this was mainly the reason why we actually were there, but Morgan Freeman and Christian Bale very quietly slipped away on the 3rd day. They just disappeared.
Yeah.
And then everyone downstairs and the paparazzi and everyone else thought that me and this other stand-in were them.
Right.
So when we came down the stairs at the end of the shooting, me and this other guy I was working with, the Morgan Freeman stand-in, we looked and we just saw hundreds of people running at us.
Wow.
And we literally went into fight or flight mode and just ran. It was just not what you expect to have hundreds of people running at you. So we just basically ran.
All right.
And we ran down the road and got stuck in this, not an alleyway, but we got stuck against this brick wall, turned around, all of a sudden there was all these lights going off in our faces and, microphones out wanting to interview us. They thought we were Morgan Freeman and Christian Bale.
Wow. You say it's $5 a photo.
I should have taken advantage of it. I just didn't, in that fight or flight moment. But, Christian, how much are you getting for this film? What are you getting paid? Rah, rah. I'm like, I'm not him. What do you mean? The next day there was some...
Did you think just to start bullshitting?
I did.
$85 million.
I didn't until the next day. The next day I thought, oh, God, I should have milked that. But it was funny. The next day there was a few magazine articles with our photos on there looking all confused.
Christian Bale, confused again.
Confused, lost
Running
in
for
dazed
his
in Hong
life.
Kong.
Lost in day.
Bailed up in alleyway.
Bailed up.
What was he doing in that alleyway? With Morgan Freeman.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been amazing, though.
It was cool. I just wish we had the phones that back then, the cameras on the phones, that we have now. That was 2004. We didn't really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, didn't get a lot of shots from that. But anyway, it was a really, really great experience. Fun.
Do you think, when you watch the film back, you're like, oh, was any of that footage maybe from a distance? That would have been me there.
Nah, I don't think so.
No? I used it for every single bit.
It's been watched over a few times, I'm guessing. Yeah. Just to double check.
Pause, frame by frame.
Was it? No.
No.
Right,
forget it. Your name come up in the credits, though?
No, I don't think so. And that's quite common, when you're doing films in Hong Kong. A lot of stuff is just, it's off the cuff, it's off the, you don't always, in the Hong Kong films, we got credits, but sometimes if you're working on an American film, you're just
there and then go.
Just there.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Wow, that's crazy.
And so you continue to go back and forth to Southeast Asia for some years for acting, but also to connect with your Sifu and to spend time there refining the techniques that you were learning from him with every visit that you took to Hong Kong. And tell us a little bit about that relationship.
Yeah, cool. So the first time I met Sifu Kong, I was, as I said, I was there with Sifu Nino Pillar, who's an amazing martial arts teacher from Adelaide, and a small group of others, and we were training in Kowloon Park. And from a distance, we would see this other Chinese gentleman with a small group of people doing their training. Looked a little bit like Tai Chi or something like that. And we'd sort of watch, and he'd give us a little wave each day. And then one day I had to go to the loo, public toilet there, and he was in there, and he walks up next to me as I'm taking a leak, and he says, "You do pee-pee?"
I am a master at PP.
Like, yes. He goes, "Hi, I am Kong." I said, "Oh, nice to meet you."
You do PP too?
But that was Sifu Kong. He was like that. That was the way. That was my introduction to him.
And there was a bit of a Bruce Lee connection with Sifu Kong as well, from what I understand.
Yeah. So when I first met him, I thought, God, and again, I thought, where do I know him from? He looks familiar. So. What happened was, after that initial meeting, he sort of invited our group to go and train with him. So myself, Sifu Nino Pillar, and a few other people I was with, we started doing a little bit of training with him in the park there. And as we're training with him, I thought, oh, where do I know him from? He looks familiar. And it didn't quite click until a month or two later, and I realised he was a Hong Kong actor from Kung Fu movies in the 70s and 80s. He's probably his major part that he had was as the crazy chef in Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Oh yes, I know exactly who you mean.
Yes, with the meat cleavers.
Yes, that was a great scene.
He has that fight with Jason Scott Lee in the back alley. He was great.
And they got up on the girders or whatever and balance beams. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, which was my favourite scene in the movie.
Right.
And then when that clicked, I was like, I get it. That's who it is. It's I get it. His name was Kong Kwok Kyung.
Oh yeah,
his Chinese name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit more about what Kong was up to.
So Kong had this really unique style that he'd developed of martial arts, because he came from a very Hong Kong Peking opera type background. He had done ballet in the past when he was younger. He was a dancer.
Wow.
But he'd done a lot of different Southern Kung Fu styles throughout his time. So when I met him, he would have been in his late 50s, I'd say. Mid 50s actually. So he'd done had a lot of experience in Kung Fu, and what he'd done is, and Tai Chi as well actually, but he'd combined his Kung Fu and his Tai Chi. As you know, in Tai Chi they do a thing called pushing hands, so it's like almost like sticking hands in Wing Chun, but it's a more circular type thing. But he'd combined that with his Latin dancing that he was doing, because he was really, really passionate about Latin dance, particularly the rumba.
Okay.
And he discovered that the waist movements of the rumba were very interconnected with Tai Chi, which he would then connect to Kung Fu. So he had this thing where he would call it action, movement, motion. The motion starts, more that internal motion in the waist and the hips leads to action, leads to movement, which leads to action, which is the Kung Fu. So it was the internal to the external. He had this really amazing system that he'd figured out, and really unique style. So every year that I went back to train with him over the years, he'd seemed to get more and more powerful, more subtle in his movements, and more effective in his techniques. And a lot of it came from all this Latin dance he was doing. He was still doing the Tai Chi and the Kung Fu, but the Latin dance, it was a really interesting connection there, yeah.
He's the one that goes, "Lee, clean up in that scene before in Dragon.
Yeah, I think he's jealous because Jason Scott Lee's
hooking up
Bruce
the
Lee's
chick.
character's flirting with the waitress
That's
and
right.
stuff, and he's getting a little bit, hang on.
Yeah, and then he throws something on the ground. He's like, "Lee, clean up."
That's right, yeah. And then he gets set on fire. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. yeah.
But yeah, he had an amazing, he had a really interesting style. But even more so than that, he was just a really amazing, interesting character.
It's interesting. Bolo Ewing, from Enter the Dragon, Bolo, and he was Tai Chi as well. Because you think, you see the Tai Chi movements and people doing it as like a functional fitness kind of thing, and it's like there's not, you're not sort of seeing sparring or tournaments or anything of Tai Chi, but then you've got people that are proponents of it that have that in their background, and it's like, well, you look at Bolo Yuang, and it's like, well, you don't want to mess with that dude. It's like, but he's from Tai Chi. How strong can he be?
Yeah, that's right. Bolo combined the bodybuilding and the powerlifting with Tai Chi, and in fact, Kong Sifu was good friends with Bolo.
Oh, really?
Day. Wow. Yeah, and he told me he did have very, very good Tai Chi.
Oh yeah. Oh man, that's you're naming all this. You're bringing back all these memories when I was like, but my teenage years of going to Movie Land and getting 8 weekly rental movies, and I'd go straight to the martial arts section and get 8. And I was trying to work my way through Jackie Chan's catalog, but he's done like almost 200 movies, and I think I'd get 8, and then
he's made 3 in that fortnight.
Yeah, it was so many. I watched so many. And him, it's the same. You usually did with Sammo Hung and was it the other guy, Yuan Yang?
Bu?
Yeah, Yuan Bu. Yeah. Yep. And it was a lot of them with the same story over and over kind of thing. But, it was like that time. And then you bring up all these moments. It's like, fuck, you met that dude. Oh, man. You've probably seen you in heaps of films and not realised it.
Yeah. And how did you feel like being a fan of these people and then meeting them and then, I guess, getting close? They always say that, don't get too close to your idols. It'll always end in tears. And how was it for you?
Well, in terms of meeting Kong was fantastic. He was just a great human being and a wonderful man. I got to meet people like Van Damme one evening.
So tell us about the evening with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Got to hang out with Van Damme in a Hong Kong nightclub. So
this is killing Matt inside.
You're living my dream life here. What happened with Van Damme?
Tell us about that evening with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So as a matter of fact, there was a bit of a connection between Kong Sifu and Van Damme. Kong had actually worked on Bloodsport and Kickboxer.
Wow.
As Van Damme's sports massage therapist.
Okay.
And Kong Sifu was actually going to be Master Xian in Kickboxer. The Thai master.
Yeah.
He was actually going to play that role until is it Philip Chan who played the actor? I think of the name, but until the actor who played
Kick
Master.
the Tree.
That's right. Yeah. So there was a bit of a connection there with Van Damme. So Van Damme, got invited to go out to a nightclubs. Van Damme was going to be there. We were going to all hang out. We are going to have a good time.
Who organised this?
It was actually Bale Logan again. I have to give him credit for that.
Yeah.
He invited me out there and he said, "Look, I've got Van Damme coming out, so let's meet up at this nightclub." So we get there.
So
being a huge Van Damme fan like yourself, mate, for years. My God, gonna meet Van Damme. So I thought, all right, I don't want to come across as too much of a fanboy, even though I am. So I'll try and play it a little bit cool when he arrives, So he came in and I said hello and he sat down and sort of looked away. And then I looked at him and he goes, "What are you looking at, you fucker?"
Really? Wow.
And I was like, and then he goes, and then he put his hand up for a handshake and he was like, "You and me." And he was just a great guy that night. And it was just him mucking around. He's just got a good sense of humor. I was a bit, on edge for a moment. Your
stomach just went, "Ooh."
It's my idol and he hates me.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But from there on, it was great, and we sort of danced the night away. There was a group of us. There was a few ladies there, and we sort of danced in a circle, calling out the names of all his films in chronological order.
Wow!
Bloodsport, Kickboxer,
yeah,
Wrong Bed, Time Cop. It was.
Did you dance the way he danced in Kickboxer?
He did. Actually, what did he dare me to do? He wanted me to do something. I think he wanted me to go and ask this lady if I could have the strawberry on top of her drink or something.
Oh, yeah.
She gave it to me and he was like,
yeah. Awesome. That would have been amazing, man. That would have been so cool.
So that was a good experience. That was good fun. Things like that. And who else can I...
who else do I like that you got to meet and hang out with?
You did spend some time with Jackie Chan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, of course. So there was that first film experience with Jackie Chan there. But secondly, I have a friend in Melbourne, Paul Androvsky, who is part of Jackie Chan's stunt team.
Mm.
So a few years later, he was working on Rush Hour 3 in Hong Kong, Jackie, or he was going to work there. And Paul invited me along with him, which was another fantastic experience because I got to meet Jackie again and spend a lot more time in that scene, which was really cool. It was fascinating. Yeah, bit of karaoke stuff with Jackie Chan and his entire team, and whole company. It was really cool.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize he's quite an accomplished singer. I think he's released like 4
Yeah.
albums or something.
Oh, he's a great singer. Yeah, he can sing. He can for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he came to that Chinese opera school, and that sort of world, and then managed to sort of I think Bruce Lee had. Oh, he was in a couple of Bruce Lee's films and worked as the stuntman and that sort of thing. Got hit a few times by Bruce. And then after Bruce Lee had died, he sort of went and filled in the gap and became the next kind of thing. And there was, which was kind of funny, when they had all the Bruce Lee rip-offs, and there was like Bruce Lee and then Bruce Leong.
Dragon Lee.
Yes. But yeah, so Jackie Chan, was obviously working in that world, and then made the trip over and became the next sort of Western Chinese kind of guy.
With the vacuum.
Yeah.
Of that archetype that was created by Bruce Lee that was never there before, really.
That's right. Yeah, it paved the way, and then there was, and Jackie would always say that he would finish his punch like this instead of like this to sort of signify some difference between what he was doing and what everyone else was doing, and all the stunts, and fantastic.
And it took him a few years to discover that personal style of his. He did a whole handful of films in the early 70s where it wasn't quite working, but then he found that comedic style that he has, and the intensity and all that stuff, and then it was. Yeah.
Do you remember the first Jackie Chan movie that you saw?
First one I saw. It's a good question. It is a good question. It might have been actually Police Story, the original.
Oh yeah, good one to start with.
Or it actually could have been Fearless Hyena.
Oh yeah.
Early ones. Yeah, I think it might have been Fearless Hyena.
The Black Singlet, was that the one with and he was.
There was a lot back. Shaolin Wooden Men. That was another good one. Remember that?
The first one I saw was Young Master.
Young Master. That was great. That's a classic. What a fight at the end.
Oh yeah. He had a stall in this. I just remember because my dad called me in. It was on SBS. It was like that was the only place you'd see these sort of films, like the world movies. And he's like, "Oh man, you got to see this. This is crazy. He's doing all this weird stuff." Like, oh, he'd never seen it. And I was like, "Oh, what is this?" And the scene that really got to us was like somebody sort of threw like a bunch of knives at him, and he like picked up a cloak and like, whoa, and sort of like flew all the knives out. It's like, whoa, It was my first experience with that sort of world. I was like, oh, Jackie Chan, yeah. And then any time his film would come up on SBS, I'm like, oh, gotta watch it. And Shaolin Wooden Men, and then Drunken Master, and all those classics. And it's basically the same story retold 1,000 times. But
There's a formula.
Yes,
very different. It works.
It's like a Nickelback song. Yeah,
right. Exactly. There's always a bad guy, and he would be the bad guy at the end with a stool or some other sort of. Or he would learn a new technique, the tiger technique, or the crane technique, or the snake. Did
you ever see Drunken Master 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that in the cinema actually.
Really?
That played in Adelaide in the cinema.
Wow. Okay.
That was awesome, and that was one of the final really good traditional kung fu ones.
Yeah. I think the only one I saw in the cinema was Rumble in the Bronx that he did.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, and then I guess the Rush Hour stuff from there. Yep. Yeah, with Chris Tucker and but it was nice to see that he'd made that impact in the US. With those films. But I do remember watching an interview with him about how they'd set up a scene with Rush Hour, and he said the difference between the Chinese way of doing things and the US is so contrasted in terms of their safety aspect. And it was like, in China, it'd be like, okay, the scene is you've got to run up the wall, go over here and get on the balcony and then go over there. And he's like, okay, cool, just turn the camera on, and he would just do it. There you go, do it a few times, great, got it. Next thing, he's like, in America, they would be like, okay, the same movement. It's going to take 6 weeks to plan out, and we'll have to get the insurance done, and we'll have to get somebody else to do it, and then make sure that it's safe, and And he's like, I just want to do it. Just put the camera on. I can do that. I don't need you to do all this other stuff. Like, I'll film it now. Like, get the camera, and we'll do it.
But there are pros and cons associated with that, and I guess one of the cons is you found yourself getting injured on a movie set.
Did, yes.
In Hong Kong, and how's that affected your career since?
Yeah, that was tough actually, because it was a bad knee injury. I tore my ACL doing a film in Hong Kong, during a rehearsal. And that was intense because that came, anyone who's had an ACL reconstruction knows that that's a good year recovery, at least, and really to get really confident on your leg again, it's a good year and a half. So that happened pretty much a year and a half, 2 years before COVID hit. So, yeah, it's been difficult. I won't lie. It was a very tough recovery from that injury. Took a lot of time, a lot of money, and yeah, it was a difficult one.
Yeah, and so you returned to Australia, and then just as COVID had hit, and just as you'd started to recover physically from that injury, you were in Ireland at the time, and and working on some projects there and some new opportunities. And then COVID hits. You suspect you may have even had COVID at that time. I remember you were really ill and displaying all of the symptoms of bad COVID. At that point, was really laid up for about 6 or so weeks before you were essentially forced to return to Australia because of the evolving pandemic. Talk us through a little bit about, as you were recovering, and that was a very long recovery period, and being an action actor as you are, how did that affect your perspective at your age, in your 40s, seeking to get back into that world?
Yeah, so as you said, I managed to obtain a UK passport. So I have some friends in Ireland who are excellent stunt people, actors. So Mark Redmond in Ireland there, he's been doing some fantastic work for years, and he's been saying for years, come over, there's lots happening. So I finally got a chance to go over, and I just healed from that injury. Went over there, and I did. I got very, very sick the minute I got there. I got a very bad flu. And cough, a cough unlike I'd ever had before. And this is literally 6 or 8 weeks before COVID was announced. So whether it was or wasn't, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did get very, very sick. It was the dampest, wettest winter apparently in 100 years in Ireland. So maybe that had something to do with it as well. But anyway, so I started doing some auditions for stunts. I thought I'll do some stunt work over here. So I got on the stunt team for The Last Duel, which was the Matt Damon film directed by Ridley Scott, who of course is the director of Aliens.
Yeah.
Alien, sorry, the first Alien.
Got it.
And so I got on the stunt team for that, and then there was some other potential work coming up. The work was about 4 weeks before it started, and it sort of got put back to 6 weeks. So there was a bit of an interim time there where I was actually staying on Mark's farm. They've actually got a great backpacker hostel and stuff like that near Cork, out in the down south. And waiting for that job to start, and then all of a sudden, the whole pandemic kicked off. There was the news reports were starting to come in. We're seeing pictures of people dropping dead overseas, and like, what the hell's going on? I had been sick for about 2 months at that point, really sick. I mean, bronchitis type. Could have even got worse. Luckily, it didn't. It was starting to clear up then, but then I had to make the decision. Look, got to get back, because that work that I was about to start on was all cancelled. Of course, everything was frozen, and everyone was panicking basically, and the borders were shutting down. That was what I was hearing. So I heard the Australian border was going to shut down. So I came back as quick as I could, got a flight back, almost got stuck in Kuala Lumpur because the flights were being cancelled. It was via Kuala Lumpur. Left Turkey, actually. We went through Istanbul as well. Left Turkey, and then halfway on our way to Kuala Lumpur, the plane had to turn back. There was something wrong with the plane. I thought, oh God. So we get back to, there's a pandemic that's just hit.
Yeah.
And we were stuck there for about 8 hours while they worked on the plane. Got back, flew to Kuala Lumpur, and then missed my connecting flight to get back to Australia. And then flights back to Australia being cancelled. You just saw them like just disappearing from the
board thing. Yeah.
From the board. Yeah. So the airline put me up at the hotel in Kuala Lumpur at the airport, they were fantastic there. It's a beautiful airport as well. But yeah, I had to wait a couple of days to get that final flight back at 10 p.m. and it was the last flight. So I thought, oh God, if this one cancels, I'm in trouble here. And I did hear that there were people having to sleep on the floor in the airport for weeks. And I don't know if this is true, but I heard that they weren't allowing foreigners to hire hotels after that point when the pandemic really hit. So people were basically unable to get accommodation.
Jeez,
now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But that's some of the things I was hearing from over there.
Wow.
So luckily, I got back on that last final flight, and then we've all sort of been here stuck ever since, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
and
adjust that mic because it's dropping out. That's right. One second.
No worries. So you've come back now, and since then, Sifu Kong has also passed away, unfortunately.
He did, sadly. He passed before the pandemic hit. He passed for about 4 years ago now. And very sad. I did get to see him a couple of last times in the hospital in Hong Kong. and got to say goodbye and to thank him for everything that he gave me. He taught me his style of circle propeller, is what he called his style, and just the time that he gave me and the energy he put into me and the encouragement and he was very much a father figure, super positive, just a wonderful energy about him, and he just wanted the best for people, and I just was so thankful for my time with him. But yeah, it was a sad time, very sad time when he passed away.
Yeah, and what a responsibility that he passed on to you with some of that knowledge, that circle propeller knowledge. From what I understand, there's not a lot of other exponents of the style that are still remaining with us.
No, there's a limited amount of people who would be able to teach circle propeller. So I would be one of them. There's a couple of gentlemen in Germany. So Mark Adenauer and his partner Peter, his kung fu partner Peter, they have Wing Chun schools in Germany, and they did a lot of training with Kong Sifu as well. So we were really, I think we were his three main students, and I don't believe that there really is. I mean, he did have a lot of local Hong Kong students. I don't know of any of them that have gone on to teach. I'm really not sure, but certainly myself and the two German instructors in Germany. Now, I also did film a documentary about Kong over the years. So while I was with him, I spent a lot of time filming him, his art, his style, his lifestyle, his personality, interviews with him and stuff like that. And I put together a 2-disc DVD set about 10 years ago, which I have a lot more footage than that. So I'm going to be doing a lot more with that in the future, particularly in conjunction with Germany, the two German instructors. We've got some plans for that. So yeah, I do intend to get Kong Sifu style circle propeller out there further. And if anyone's interested, I do have a YouTube channel, Whyte Dragon Films.
Yep.
Whyte Dragon, WHYTE, Whyte Dragon Films. And I will be putting up more content on there in regards to circle propeller and Kong Sifu as well. A lot of interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to share his philosophy.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, and a lot to look forward to there. And I think the pandemic creates opportunities for us to often reflect on some of those things that we have done. And when we reflect on your extraordinary journey from a very working class background, often one where you were discouraged from pursuing these dreams, which seemed quite ethereal in your youth, and where you lived vicariously through these kung fu videos that you found at the local video store and the deli. And from there, although not necessarily formally receiving the qualifications and the grading, you've nonetheless risen to the top of your field, and then being able to intertwine your life's journey with some of these figures that you've been admiring on the screen for so long, and then to come across that chance moment with in that day in Shanghai that led you into a path of spending more time with people like Jackie Chan and idols of yours like Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's quite an extraordinary journey. Do you ever reflect on that journey and think, wow, that's something really special there?
Yeah, I guess I do. I mean, I was always going back and forth to Southeast Asia, and as a matter of fact, when Kong Sifu passed away, I was doing some films in Thailand, so I started also branching out and doing some action films in Thailand. But of course, I also had my other life in Melbourne when I was in Melbourne for 14 years. And I did a lot of TV drama there, a lot of guest roles, a lot of TV commercials, stuff like that. And yeah, I was always leading this double life back and forth. And now when I look back, yeah, it is quite so many memories and so many memorable experiences, and just I think back, God, was I really there? Did I really do that? And and just great memories. And I guess I really did do many, many things that I dreamed of doing when I was that young teenager. Really got to do them. And a lot of it was risk-taking, major risk-taking. And, sometimes it paid off, other times it didn't pay off.
Yeah.
Sometimes there were disasters.
Yeah.
But you get that with risk-taking.
Yeah.
But I definitely took those risks, and, yeah, I don't regret any of it at all. I think it's been a fantastic adventure. It's
been an amazing adventure. It's been amazing to be on the sidelines of this adventure and to see things unfold as they have, from seeing your ambitions as a young actor or a young man finding his way in life to finding that way was definitely through acting, but acting in that very specific niche of action films, that genre that you loved growing up, that you were such an enthusiast of. as you were growing older in the suburbs of Adelaide to only find yourself on set with these people is a very, very cool journey. And I hope that that perhaps some of the young athletes that tune into the podcast and those people that have been following us, I'm sure they'll see a lot of themselves in you and see that perhaps there's a few other paths available to them rather than those that have been perhaps laid before them by those that are around them.
Yes, you certainly have to forge your own path. And
And what would be your advice to anybody who's perhaps in that predicament where you were perhaps when you were in your late teens, early 20s? You mightn't have a supportive environment, you mightn't have a lot of money, and you mightn't have a lot of options, but you've got a dream. What would be your advice to those people?
I think just don't spend too much time. Don't spend years and years and years working yourself up to it. Just go for it. Do it. Take the first steps. I feel like I'd probably waited a few too many years to really kick things off. Although, everything happens for a reason, the way it did. But I'd say just really, and of course it's easier said than done now that we're in a pandemic. Okay, so obviously it's a different world now. Now we've got to be realistic and say, when I was doing all that, you go overseas and you come back when you want to. Now you could get stuck overseas. You could get stuck overseas for months. You might not be able to get back for a year or two. There could be a new strain. I mean, there's a lot to consider now. So I realise it is easy for me to say, do follow your dreams, do what you want to do. But of course, you have to temper that with common sense and the current pandemic climate as well. But you can always make steps towards things. If you're into acting, you can work on your craft. You can do scenes. You can, most auditions now are done online. You film your audition and you upload it and you send it off. Blue screen in the background. So you can certainly work on your craft and put it out there. And there's still massive opportunities out there.
And you certainly haven't stopped it on the combat side of things either. Up until recently, you were preparing yourself for perhaps your debut heavyweight bout.
I don't know about that. Certainly doing a bit of training, but I don't know about heavyweight. I would have to lose 20 kilos to get to
super heavyweight.
Open weight.
See, at the weight we're at now, that would go for you too, Dave. We're actually considered in boxing in Australia would be considered super heavyweight.
Super heavyweight,
which means
I'm happy with that.
Super duper.
Well, you're happy, but you might not be happy when you find out that your opponent is 6'10" and 350 pounds because super heavyweight is I think it's all the way up from 80 something 90 kilos.
So you're 110 kilos, but you're the little guy.
We're gonna be the little guy,
right?
You're gonna be up against some absolute giant.
But was that just a matter? Sorry, was that just a matter of recalibrating, having a new goal because of COVID?
I was just doing a bit of training and stuff like that.
Just a bit of fun.
A bit of fun. But no, we didn't.
Do you ever fantasize about perhaps getting in the ring or the cage at some point?
At this age, with these
testing
injuries?
yourself maybe in a Masters type format or something along those lines where you're fighting against equally decrepit people?
I don't know. I mean,
because we've got a cage just here.
We do. I mean, I'm happy to test myself out with the arm wrestlers. After they're all exhausted,
very strong.
Come in when they're exhausted.
Yeah,
just come in and.
Well, it's very strategic.
Yeah,
you sat back and watched and planned your moments. Hey, I'm ready now.
Daniel, the opportunist Whyte. So what are your plans now moving forward? What are your now you've accumulated all of this experience and skill set? What are the various areas that you're now able to deploy that in, do you feel?
Well, certainly I'm working on now getting 10 years has passed since I made that documentary about Circle Propeller and Kung Sifu and his style of Kung Fu. So I think now's a very good time to get that information really out there. So we're working out ways with some players in Germany. We're working out ways to do that. We're going to be releasing a lot more information about Kong's style, which I think needs to get out there. Currently I work as a trainer, so I'm teaching people sometimes all over the country in conflict resolution, safety, self-defense, negotiating, and security as well. So I get to apply a lot of the martial arts strategies, and not just the physical stuff, but a lot of the common sense mental strategies as well to a lot of the stuff that I'm teaching. So,
and I imagine being on your feet and presenting and ad-libbing as well as following a rough script in your presentation would be skills learned in acting as well.
Oh, for sure, yeah, definitely.
So isn't it interesting when people talk about acting perhaps as a career and they think, oh, well, that's just being on the silver screen, whereas you've kind of demonstrated that it can be that, and it can be commercial, and it can be TV, and it can be, it can be movie, it can be stunt, it can be any number of fields. Once you've got the skill set and you develop the network, then the opportunities will tend to open up to you.
That's right. Acting is a great self-development tool, and that's how I've always looked at it. It helps you to become more of who you are. So it gives you confidence. It allows you to speak to all sorts of different people, and it certainly helped with my training and coaching and instructing, presenting, all that stuff. Definitely. But beyond that, in terms of the movies and acting, we've got to wait and see at the moment with the COVID situation and see. When's the world truly going to open up again?
Yeah, when do things change? Yeah, there's a lot of people waiting to find that out, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But Daniel, thanks so much for coming into the studio today and sharing your story with us. It's absolutely a remarkable one, and one I think will inspire many who tune in today and hear of your story of a young working class man in the suburbs of Adelaide that got to spend his time with and share a part of his journey with many of his idols, and not only that, but still to this day, super fit, super strong,
doing my best,
looking after yourself, and always ready for the next opportunity. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Daniel Whyte for coming along on the Daily Combat podcast, and mate, we'll look forward to seeing you on the podcast again very, very soon.
Thank you so much, Dave. Much appreciated. I'd love to come back and talk more. Actually.
Awesome,
especially about martial arts.
Yeah.
Combat, that's what I'm interested in. So
excellent, fantastic.
Thank you, Matt.
That's awesome. All we talk about on the podcast. That and sometimes acting. So we'll look forward to having you back on. Very, very soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.